So I did a video yesterday about juvenile offenders and recidivism, and I have a question here from a commenter about a particular celebrity situation. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. She says, I'm curious on how you feel about Chris Brown. Do you think he truly changed after the Rihanna incident? He was 17 at the time. So as a general rule of thumb, I don't speak on celebrity situations like that. Just, um, uh, so what I can do is I can address like behaviors in that particular age bracket. And what I've seen with in working with men who have been abusive or have killed somebody before. So, what I've noticed in working with men, in particular men who have been incarcerated, a lot of times men start offending, men and women both actually, and trans start offending when they are younger. Not always, but most of the time, there's a history of violent offenses, especially when you're talking about against women. And what tends to happen is things just build and build and build and build. Um, there are, I won't say that, some people won't, um, that some people can't get out of that cycle of offending and violent offenses. What I will say is typically, in order for people to, um, in order for people to rehabilitate, I'll put it to you that way, have some level of rehabilitation, um, number one, there needs to be serious consequences for their actions. So, serious consequences are usually life altering moments. It's not just a slap on the hand. I'm talking about life altering moments where something has been taken from them or their life has changed substantially in the way that it would never be the same again. So, I have worked, with offenders, and you know, maybe something has happened to them in the name of violence when they've gotten out. So maybe they've been shot in the head, or they've been paralyzed, or some of their actions are going to lead them to an early grave. Some people have lost their entire business franchises, or they've been kicked out of their field altogether, something like that, where they've fallen from grace. That's number one. Number two would be they're not allowed to sit in a level of delusion and projection. So they really have to. So what tends to happen with a lot of people who abuse, there's almost always like a level of like fixed delusion that goes into that in order to justify their actions. Like, so for example, if I punch somebody, it's like, well, you made me do it because of X, Y, and Z. You always do this to me, and you always force me to make me want to hit you, that kind of stuff. So that would be like a level of fixed delusion, as opposed to being in therapy. Like, so this is something I also used to work with sex offenders all the time. It would be, so I'll use a general, like something not related to a client. So something general would be like, okay, well, a child sex offender, exposed himself to, kids at the park or at the school and was found masturbating. That's the offense. So a lot of times what they'll say is, I was just intoxicated and my penis just fell out. And now they got me in here on all these charges and I didn't do it, Dr. Jones, something like that. And so holding them accountable and not allowing them to stay fixed in that delusion, because sometimes when people lie like that, a lot of times they'll convince themselves of that lie, right? And they'll just keep going. And I say, no, that's not what you were doing. We're not going to buy into that. Um, you know, uh, you know, some random name. This is like your second or third offense. And even if it wasn't, there's substantial evidence here that says that you are a pedophile. So we're going to address that, and I'm not going to allow you to say that to me ever again. So it's like holding that level of accountability with an abusive man is also the same thing. Like, no, you beat somebody and you have a serious problem, and sometimes it works. Like I've had to tell men before, you seem to have a problem with women, and oh, you know, when I say that, you would have thought that like I was the second coming of Christ, and they were kind of running for the hills. They were calling everything but a child of God, But when I say that statement, you seem to have a problem with women, a serious problem, and we're gonna have to look at that and pick that apart. They don't like that phrase at all. So there's that. Number three, I think there's an element of shame that has to be brought into it. So a lot of times people, when they abuse, they kind of try to do that behind closed doors and things like that. But there's a difference when there's a level of like communal shame that's brought into abusive behavior. There needs to be, number four, there needs to be ongoing accountability for that. And a lot of times it works great if people are in groups. I've had it, where men like to check other men on accountability, because there's levels to abuse and aggression and things like that. There's levels to that. And a lot of times they'll do better. Youngsters will do better when there's old elders or OGs in the group, right? Because youngsters, a lot of times they talk too much. They think they're invincible. And this is not me being disrespectful. This is just me from what I've seen. A youngster will sort of pop off at the mouth. They think they're invincible and nobody can step to them. But an older person will check that a youngster really quick, and they will do less talking, and they're going to be about that life. They're going to take you outside and they're going to show you what they're about. So sometimes it can just be a matter of little fish, big fish phenomenon, and that big fish will shut it down really quick, and that youngster will just be quiet. And so there can be levels to it. So sometimes it's just a matter of pairing a younger man with an older man and vice versa. Because the reality is there's always going to be somebody that's bigger than you, that's stronger than you, and you just can't clap back to. Number six, I think this is also more likely than not. They're more likely than not to be rehabilitated when they're not coddled or reinforced in certain ways. So that means their mama, their sister, their cousin, other women aren't coddling them, or they're not getting coddled from other people. Or they don't get this bravado from being rich and buying their way out of crime or things like that. So I think when you take away that coddlement, that entitlement, all of those things, and there's a humbling aspect to it, where it's like, no, you have to take care of yourself. You can't go cry to your mama or to whomever. You have to do your time for your crime. I think also too, there's like a level of accountability. So for example, when you get a DUI a number of times, they're going to put the little blow meter in your car right before you even drive. And so a lot of way back when I used to when they do like SAP evaluation for Department of Transportation and things like that. I don't know if it still works this way. It's been many years. My supervisor used to do them, and I used to kind of sit with them. But their job used to hold them accountable for a period of time. If they got like a DUI and things like that, if they continue to get a DUI, they couldn't keep their license, and they couldn't keep that kind of job anymore. And the same thing needs to be true for abusers. There needs to be longevity in the accountability outside of like the prison system, but also with their job or other situations where they can't get hired, or it's going to really affect their livelihood. And this is not always a surefire way. This is just some things where I've seen where people have changed. And change isn't always a 180, but just a few degrees. Hope that